Hello and welcome to another session of Miss Thomas Learning from Home. Today we're going to have a look at Reconstruction and its three main phases. So we're going to start off with Abraham Lincoln, who is really pro abolishing slavery and black rights. He starts off here with the Emancipation Proclamation during the American Civil War. He says that if the Union forces are to win the American Civil War, then slavery would be abolished. In 1865, that proclamation became true with the 13th Amendment. The Union won the American Civil War, and Abraham Lincoln put in the 13th Amendment, the 13th change to the American Constitution, that set of rules which said that slavery was now illegal throughout the entire USA. He was consequently assassinated for his ideas. Consequently, his Vice President Johnson takes power. Now, Johnson is from the South and is very much more interested in uniting the country rather than trying to re-establish black American lives within America, bearing in mind that they have spent centuries enslaved into slavery. They now need to be reconstructed and rebuilt into society so that they can lead a free life. So Johnson allows the Confederate States to rejoin without any apologies. State government is given quite a lot more power rather than the federal government, allowing for the southern states to do almost as they please. He introduces the Black Codes. The Black Codes is this idea that black Americans can't do certain things. For example, serving the jury in a court. He also stops the Freedmen Bureau. Now, the Freedmen Bureau was a charity to help ex-slaves re-establish themselves in society, and he puts a stop to that. So we see quite a lot of regression and going backwards for the progress of black Americans after the American Civil War and after that abolition of slavery. Following Johnson, we see the Radical Republicans. Now, they are again going to put in huge amounts of progress for those black Americans, those freed slaves, after the 13th Amendment. They re-established that Freedmen Bureau, that charity to help ex-slaves. They introduced the 14th Amendment, which continues from the 13th Amendment and says that Americans should all be treated equally, no matter what their race is. So it gives ex-slaves their citizenship into the USA. The 15th Amendment then gives voting rights to ex-slaves. However, the legacy of these huge, significant, positive changes to black Americans after the abolition of slavery under the 13th Amendment are marred. Many Southerners, black Americans, are enforced into sharecropping. So that means that they rent their land off white slave owners, with 2/3 of their crops or their profits going back to that slave owner. Remember, when they become freed, they don't have any land, they're not given any resources, they've not got any savings to start their life. So they often go and work for the land of the slave owners, and then as a consequence, they give 2/3 of their profits, their wage, back to the slave owner. So they're almost in a kind of slavery again. We see a lot of corruption within the Southern governments trying to undermine the 13th Amendment and keep black Americans enslaved. That 15th Amendment with the literacy test, sees literacy tests being introduced. Black Americans, ex-slaves, have not had an education. Therefore, many of them cannot read, they cannot write. So although they've got the amendment, the federal right to vote, Southern states and many other states put in literacy tests so that it prevents black Americans and ex-slaves going to vote. The Ku Klux Klan, a white supremacy, violent, hating group, really do rise as a consequence of your Reconstruction era. We see segregation, that division between white and black Americans taking place. And to be honest, the federal government really don't care. They turn a blind eye, because after the American Civil War and after this initial stage of Reconstruction, they are more focused in their migration and movement westwards. So that's where their focus lies. It's not to do with that north-south divide anymore. So overall, in terms of progress for black Americans during a Reconstruction era, on a federal level, it's really quite positive. You've got your 13th Amendment, you've got your Freedmen Bureau, you've got your 14th and 15th Amendment. However, on a local level, You have got sharecroppers, you've got your corruption, you've got your Confederate states having their own governments. It's really quite limited in terms of their progress.